Dr. Travis Taylor is finally breaking his silence. Minutes ago, he revealed that an entire episode of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch was permanently banned, not because of safety, not because of technical failure, but because of something they recorded in the sky that night. A silent object hovering above the Mesa disrupted every camera, sensor, and data log simultaneously. Production never aired the episode. Until now, no one knew why, and what Travis just exposed may explain why government officials arrived before sunrise. Subscribe before we continue. It began with a hesitation. During a recent behind-closed-doors interview for a scientific symposium, Dr. Travis Taylor was discussing the evolution of Skinwalker Ranch research when a reporter asked a casual question about never-before-seen data. Travis paused, long enough that the room fell silent. Then, instead of brushing it off like he had done countless times in past interviews, he leaned into the microphone and quietly admitted that one investigation during production was forcibly halted, and the entire episode was banned from ever airing. According to Travis, it was not due to safety errors, lost footage, or team disputes, but because of what appeared in the sky. Until that moment, no one in the public was supposed to know it even existed. He explained that filming took place late into the night on a routine weather monitoring test. At 1:43 a.m., sensors picked up a sudden magnetic spike above the Mesa. Travis noted it as a probable equipment glitch. 30 seconds later, the spike doubled. Crew members described feeling a subtle vibration in the ground beneath their feet, as though something unseen had shifted above them. The atmosphere changed, silent, heavy, like static before lightning. But the sky was clear. As cameras turned upward, a dark shape emerged just beyond the thin cloud layer. No light, no sound, no heat signature consistent with aircraft. Travis says it moved with intentional stillness, remaining suspended, as if physically anchored to the airspace. Moments later, every camera pointed at the object froze. The feed didn't go black. It locked, timestamp running, image unchanged. Within minutes, drones dropped, equipment rebooted, all recorded files from that hour corrupted completely. Production notified network executives by satellite phone. By sunrise, an order had come in: do not mention it again. And for the first time, Travis Taylor just did. According to Travis, what made that night so disturbing wasn't just the unidentified object floating silently above the Mesa. It was how impossible it was to scientifically categorize. At first glance, the team suspected an experimental military drone or satellite flare, but the object seemed to generate no thermal trace, no transponder signal, and exerted sudden localized electromagnetism without registering any known propulsion. The data captured in the first 18 seconds before the equipment failure reflected directional interference, almost like targeted pressure applied to specific camera angles. It reacted to being observed, Travis stated. He claims they captured a split-second frame before system lock, a shape almost disc-like, but appearing semi-translucent, as if light warped around it. The absence of heat signature puzzled him most. If it was metal, we'd see thermal buildup. If it was plasma or energy-based, there would be dissipation. This was neither. Moments after the still image was frozen, several team members reported experiencing short-term disorientation. One crew operator described it as "my depth perception twisting inward." Another, usually skeptical, claimed a high-frequency ringing sound for nearly 40 seconds that didn't register on any device. The stationary weather sensors, however, spiked into what Travis described as vector disturbance frequencies, anomalous readings known to mimic gravitational variation. What terrified them wasn't that something was there. It was that whatever it was knew they were watching it. Instead of retreating or accelerating like objects have been seen doing before, it held its position mid-air, as if absorbing data from them. Electricity in the generator surged, cameras glitched in rotation. Communication lines went from normal to scrambled audio, momentarily transmitting reversed speech across the team's comms. At 1:46 a.m., without any visible movement, the object vanished. Not darting away, just gone. Sensors instantly flatlined, and that's when they realized the night had just begun unraveling. Seconds after the object blinked out of existence, every live feed on their central monitor wall flipped from tracking sky angles to pointing directly at the team. No one touched the control. According to Travis, it looked as though someone or something, had remotely overridden the camera matrix. Each camera, positioned across multiple acres and locked on fixed survey patterns, simultaneously shifted inward to center on the men and women in the command trailer. It was watching them back. The tech team scrambled. Systems were manually rebooted, cables were physically pulled, backup batteries were disengaged, yet the feeds remained active. Our equipment wasn't online, yet it was still broadcasting, Travis recalled. It was like the entire system had a memory of us, even after it was dead. Audio clips recovered later were far worse. A total loss of radio communication occurred for 2 minutes and 24 seconds. But during that blackout, static wasn't silent. Instead, fragments of conversations, their own voices from earlier in the evening, began playing back, distorted and reversed, as if mocking them. One clip repeatedly looped Travis's earlier statement: "We must observe without interfering." Only the playback distorted it into something horrifying. "We observe, you interfere." Temperature inside the trailer dropped 15 degrees in under a minute, cold, without wind or reason. The generator outside surged erratically. Several crew members described feeling as if an invisible pressure pressed against their chest, making breath difficult. A seasoned military contractor, normally composed under stress, abruptly exited the trailer without explaining why and refused to return for the remainder of the night. When the camera feeds finally cut to black, one screen, just one, remained lit. It showed an infrared silhouette standing approximately 40 yards from the trailer, not moving, no heat output, just an outline of a figure-shaped void. Travis stepped outside to confirm visually. There was nothing there, yet inside, the image stayed on screen until all power died. That was the moment he realized this wasn't just technology failing, it was being controlled. After the camera feeds cut to black and the silhouette vanished from the infrared monitor, the team retreated from the trailer, rattled but trying to regain control. Travis, always the scientific anchor, ordered a full reset of the command center. Backup power was initiated using portable generators, and 3 researchers attempted to re-establish baseline communications with the off-site monitoring facility. What happened next pushed the team from shaken to deeply disturbed. At precisely 2:13 a.m., while rebooting the external tracking system, the FLIR, forward-looking infrared, unit atop the ridge locked onto a moving target without user command. Startled, the tech team watched the object return at low altitude, traveling at a speed estimated between 400 and 600 miles per hour. Even more unnerving than its velocity was its flight pattern. It wasn't moving through the air. It appeared to phase or skip across the sky, leaving no thermal trail except during brief microbursts when it sharply altered direction at impossible angles. "This thing didn't bank like an aircraft," Travis later explained. "It pivoted like it wasn't flying, like it was teleporting in extremely short bursts." 3 seconds later, every animal in the surrounding field went silent. 25 seconds after that, seismic sensors registered a sudden, intense, energetic pulse originating above the mesa, approximately 250 feet off the ground. The atmospheric pressure spike caused several on-site monitoring tablets to shatter without impact. The smell of ozone filled the air, and a faint electrical crackling could be heard. Described by one crew member as like static crawling across metal, the unidentified object paused directly above the mesa plateau, motionless for nearly 18 seconds. During that stillness, all remaining audio logging equipment captured a low-frequency humming that fluctuated between 17 and 19 hertz, the same range associated with migraine induction, visual disturbances, and flight or fight activation in humans. Several crew members reported nausea, disorientation, and extreme emotional unease. Then came what terrified them most. The object didn't just depart. It ascended vertically at such velocity, the instrumentation could only record the start of acceleration before contact was lost. No sonic boom, no visible displacement of air. It simply vanished. Moments later, the primary system console, which had remained offline since the blackout, powered back on by itself. A single message appeared across all screens. Not yours to see. No one in the command center typed it. That was the moment Travis Taylor realized this was no longer observation. They were part of the experiment, and the question none of them could shake was, how long had it been watching them first? The Mesa went dark again after the message appeared on the monitors, but the team wasn't done processing what they just witnessed when another wave hit. This time not visual, but electrical. Travis ordered the remaining equipment to be shut down. He wanted controlled silence, no interference. Yet, even with power cut off at the breaker box, handheld EMF meters began spiking higher than any reading previously recorded on the ranch. The spikes weren't random, they were patterned. One meter flashed at 2.4 milligauss, then 4.8, then 9.6, ascending in a perfect doubling sequence as though mapped to a binary progression. Travis, shocked, muttered, "That's not natural. Something's counting." Before the crew could respond, the EMF readings jumped past measurable thresholds. The instruments overloaded and went silent. Immediately after that silence, every smartphone in the command area, powered off and with batteries removed, vibrated simultaneously. When they checked the screens, each displayed the same thing, a timestamp of 2:13:18. The exact second the object paused above the Mesa before its vertical departure. They hadn't taken their phones outside. They hadn't stood beneath the object. It had marked them from afar. As the EMF wave continued radiating outward, crew members reported a strange static sensation along their arms, as though hair follicles were being tugged. One historian on site began speaking incoherently, referencing dates from 1776, 1947, and 2023 in rapid succession, none of which connected coherently. Another researcher suddenly vomited without showing any symptoms moments prior. Several described the sensation of pressure inside their ears, as though they'd entered a deep underwater descent. The most unsettling response came from a former military intelligence officer assigned to observe the ranch operations. He froze in place, eyes unfocused, and whispered, "It's testing our reactions. It's seeing how far it can push." When asked what it was, he blinked, regained awareness, and claimed no memory of speaking. Travis later theorized that the surge wasn't merely energy, it was directional stimulus, something probing both physiology and cognition. Minutes after the wave dissipated, a geologist monitoring subterranean channels reported a sudden pressure flux beneath the Mesa, the same pattern observed before past anomalies involving cattle decompressions and light beam anomalies. The implication chilled Travis more than anything else that night. Whatever was above wasn't just affecting electronics, it was probing the people, testing what the human threshold was, and the energy signatures indicated one alarming truth, that whatever they encountered was not leaving. It was repositioning, waiting, or worse, preparing for the next escalation. Following the EMF surge, the research team was advised to suspend investigation and evacuate until conditions stabilized. Travis, however, insisted they review all data before leaving the property. "If we walk now without understanding what just happened," he said, "we may never get another chance." It would be a decision that many on the crew later regretted. At approximately 3:07 a.m., they attempted one final sweep of the Mesa access point. 3 team members, including Travis, stepped outside the command trailer with handheld detection gear and radiation counters. Temperatures were stable. EMF was no longer spiking. But the moment they passed beyond the floodlight's perimeter, their radios crackled. Not with static, but with their own voices from earlier that day. One transmission repeated a phrase that Travis had uttered during routine setup hours earlier. "If tonight is quiet, we look deeper." Except the playback warped it. "If they're quiet tonight, we go deeper." The distinction hit hard. As they neared the Mesa's shadow line, the ridge monitoring unit, completely disconnected since the blackout, activated on its own. A deep, bass-like vibration rolled under their feet. The sensation was similar to standing next to a freight train passing under the ground. The radiation counter jumped from normal levels to nearly 30 microsieverts in under 5 seconds, forcing them to halt. One operator began bleeding lightly from his nose. Then, the environment shifted. Wind began blowing from the wrong direction, inward, toward the Mesa, even though weather records confirmed still air that night. Dust, leaves, and dry brush gravitated towards a point near a rock shelf. It was like the land itself was exhaling towards something unseen. Travis shouted for retreat, but the ground suddenly rumbled, a shallow quake without any seismographic alerts off-site. Then the floodlights went out, all of them. Every single light source, even battery lanterns and infrared beams, extinguished instantly, as if swallowed rather than shut off. One team member screamed in the darkness, not out of pain, but panic. He reported seeing movement beside him, a humanoid outline walking parallel, matching his pace without producing sound. Others felt a sudden gravitational pull toward the Mesa, as though their center of mass was temporarily manipulated. Travis, barely able to see, issued the command to abort and fall back to the trailer. The entire retreat happened in silence. No footsteps heard except their own. No wind, only pressure. When they reached the threshold of the command center and crossed under the canopy, the lights returned. Instant, no flicker. Everything was exactly as it had been 5 minutes prior, except one piece of equipment, a handheld thermal scope, had captured a single frame during the blackout. On reviewing it, white-hot signatures of multiple human-shaped figures could be seen descending from above the mesa, spaced evenly apart, right where the air pressure had centered minutes earlier. Travis marked that moment in his private field log with a single sentence: "It didn't want us near that location, not to observe, not to understand, because something was there it was trying to protect or hide." And that is when he knew if they stayed any longer, they wouldn't have been allowed to leave. Once the team reassembled inside the command trailer, shaken and covered in dirt, an urgent internal debate began, not about what they had witnessed, but whether any of it should ever leave the ranch. Multiple crew members argued it posed too great a risk, not only scientifically but psychologically and possibly politically. Travis, visibly distressed but trying to maintain composure, stated that what they recorded could redefine everything we think we understand about physics, surveillance, and possibly intelligence that predates us. Minutes after power fully stabilized, backup drives automatically initiated data synchronization through the network hub. But something happened that no one had expected. The footage and sensor logs tied directly to the blackout window began vanishing in real time. Audio clips were replaced with blank static. Video feeds rewound and rewrote themselves to erase the object above the mesa, the thermal outlines, and all EMF telemetry from the surge. A tech specialist attempted to isolate the data and force manual preservation, but the system overwrote everything directly on the drives. When they disconnected them physically, the damage was already done. It was as if the ranch itself had edited the files. A heated confrontation erupted. One senior advisor demanded they report the incident to federal partners immediately, claiming the signature was not of known terrestrial origin. Another, who had observed similar anomalies tied to classified projects, countered, warning that disclosure could result in shutdown of the entire program and seizure of all personal materials. One researcher, in near tears, suggested destroying the surviving notes entirely and quietly ending the investigation before someone got hurt. That's when the head of security entered the room with updated clearance protocols from higher up. According to him, the incident had already been forwarded through encrypted channels, but the official response was chillingly brief. Suspend analysis. Do not pursue replication. Not for public release. No mention of safety. No questions about what happened. Just a directive to stop. Travis pushed back. He argued that halting investigation meant abandoning all scientific integrity. What we saw was deliberate, he said. Whatever interacted with us demonstrated the ability to not only affect our surroundings, but to erase our documentation of it. If we don't try to understand it, we remain at its mercy. But the reply that came next from the comms officer silenced the room. They didn't say, "Don't research it." They said, "Don't try to show it." That distinction landed like a warning shot. It wasn't that the discovery couldn't be studied. It simply couldn't be witnessed by anyone outside that compound. And so, that's how the decision was made. Not to deny what happened, but to contain it. The footage wasn't just lost. It was intentionally buried because someone or something had made it very clear that the world isn't supposed to see what really happened that night above the Mesa. In the months that followed, silence became policy. Contracts were extended, statements were moderated, and that night was officially categorized as data corrupted due to environmental interference. But off-camera, the crew's behavior spoke volumes. Several members left the field entirely, some reporting persistent nightmares of a figure standing beyond their window, while others claimed their electronics would activate without power, just like the ranch equipment did during the incident. One technician even relocated out of state, telling a colleague, "I can work somewhere with ghosts or creatures, but not something that watches you think." Travis quietly preserved fragments of evidence through handwritten logs and voice recordings made on analog devices, machines incapable of remote access. In one log, he wrote, "Whatever we encountered did not react to us. Its appearance triggered our observation systems. We weren't recording it, it was activating us." When production resumed, the Mesa episode was scrapped and replaced with safer content. Viewers saw controlled edits, lost equipment data, unstable weather, no mention of airborne anomalies. But earlier this year, during a private panel, Travis broke the script. Without naming specifics, he said, "There was one night when the ranch decided what it would let us see, and it chose something we weren't prepared for." That comment was cut from official release within 24 hours, but a leaked offline clip now circulates quietly among researchers. Travis ended his private memo with a chilling line. "We keep trying to study the phenomenon, but what if that night it was studying us? Not to harm, but to measure response." And that leaves one final question, the one the footage didn't erase. If it already knows how we react, what happens when it decides to test us again?